Russia has been a strong ally to the government of Myanmar. And this month, Russia and Myanmar made a big announcement. But let's remember, Russia is at war right now. And the war that's going on between Russia and Ukraine is far more deadly than the war going on in Myanmar. And it's not looking good for Russia, to be honest. So what happens to Myanmar after Russia loses? Hello everyone, it's ASEAN Anthony. And in this video, Russia's big gamble in Myanmar. Now, obviously, the government of Myanmar and the resistance fighters in Myanmar have been locked in conflict for a couple years now. But Myanmar has always had one powerful military ally, Russia. Heavy arms from Russia, fighter jets from Russia, and much, much more. But recently, they have made and announced something much, much bigger. And that is a massive investment into Myanmar. Yes, Russia is planning a massive economic investment into Myanmar, and I'm going to tell you all about it. Now, in June of 2026, Russia and Myanmar announced that they will be reviving something called the Dawei Special Economic Zone, and Russia will be investing millions. So what is the Dawei Special Economic Zone? Now, this was a special economic zone that was first created by Japan and Thailand as a joint venture. The goal of this special economic zone was to be the largest industrial zone in Southeast Asia. Now, Japan has a history of building special economic zones in Myanmar because Japan built something called the Dawei Special Economic Zone in Yangon, and it's the most profitable area in Yangon. It hosts about 100 global industries all in one location, and it's been very successful and profitable for Japan. But since the events of 2021, and even a little bit before that, there's been no progress on this. Now, Japan claims that the reason why there's been no progress is because they don't have the money. But we kind of know that the real reason is the conflict, and they just don't want to say it. So what the government of Myanmar has done is they have tapped Russia to step in, and Russia has agreed. They have signed a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, yes, just like the one Donald Trump signed. And Russia has agreed to invest billions. The Dawei Special Economic Zone will be built in the deep south of Myanmar. Russia plans to build energy plants, fantastic. A deep sea port capable of handling very large ships, fantastic. And they're going to build industrial facilities like oil refineries. Myanmar really needs oil refineries. Oil refineries in Myanmar could make Myanmar far richer than the people expect. And the government knows this. Now, these projects aren't just about electricity and oil. These projects are set to prove to the world that the government of Myanmar is in control, and the government of Myanmar is not isolated because they have partners around the world, and one of which is a superpower. In fact, the second in command in Myanmar's military, I think it's the deputy commander in chief, if I'm not mistaken. He said, he vowed to crush any opposition in the Deep South. So you can expect the battles to start ramping up in this area because they are going to try to clear the way for Russian investment. But here's the twist. Can Russia afford to be investing in Myanmar in a time like this? No, they cannot. Now, you have to understand that Russia is currently falling to Ukraine in a very, very expensive way because the Russian economy was not expected to have this war between Russia and Ukraine go on for so many years. When this war was first announced, it was called a special operation, And we all expected, myself included, we all expected Russia to just run over the Ukrainians. But that did not happen. The Ukrainians first were putting up a good fight. Sometimes the Russians were winning, sometimes the Ukrainians are winning. But now, as time has gone on, the Ukrainians are winning much, much more, such that Russia will either lose or they will tie. But Russia is not going to win. So what does this mean for Myanmar? Well, the first thing that's going to happen after Russia loses, or if Russia loses, is the military equipment will stop coming. The fighter jets will stop coming, but it's not just about fighter jets. It's the tools for these fighter jets. It's the parts for these fighter jets. And it's the repair expertise for these fighter jets. Because even after you buy a fighter jet, you still have to repair it. You still need special tools made in Russia to fix it. And you also need the Russian expertise for these repairs. And Russia will be in no position to be giving out any type of fighter jets, arms, heavy weapons, etc., because they will need to rebuild their own military. Even if they win, they will have to do that. The next thing that's going to happen is the money will stop coming. You have to understand that Russia is facing even more severe sanctions than Myanmar, and their sanctions are going to last a lot longer than the ones you're going to see in Myanmar. The Russian economy is not doing well for obvious reasons, but that's not the problem. The problem is that Russia has far more people and they have far more land. So the government of Russia is spread thin financially. They have so many pots to fill and they have almost no money left. I mean, Russia economically is not doing well at all, even if they try to lie about their numbers. But all that means one thing. Myanmar will lose its alternative ally. And when I say alternative ally, remember, Myanmar has two allies, China and Russia. Once Russia falls, that just leaves China, and that would make Myanmar dependent on China. And any deals that China will want to do, any type of agreements or arrangement that China wants to do with Myanmar, Myanmar will be in no position to say no, because Myanmar will have no alternatives. I'm not saying this means that China will take over Myanmar, but what I am saying is China could if they wanted to, because what can Myanmar do? They only have one ally if Russia falls, and that's China. And maybe that's good. You know, China's not the most evil country in the world, but you never want to be too dependent on just one country, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. China might be nice to Myanmar today. Tomorrow they might wake up and say, you know what? All those resources are our resources now, and you can't do anything about it. We don't know.